want to welcome all of you to the presentation today, the post-secondary transition presentation that will be done by Nancy Hartshorn, Dr. Nancy Hartshorn. Transition to a meaningful life. It doesn't happen without big dreams. Today's training is hosted by DB Central, and DB Central is a U.S. Department of Education funded grant project. So today's training is also brought to you by the U.S. Department of Education. So thank all of you for coming. Dr. Nancy Hartshorn is a professor at Delta College, and she is also a school psychologist and a parent. And her son, Jacob, is an adult with deaf blindness, and she's going to talk to us today a little bit about her experience assisting him with his transition, and some of the she's going to share some of the tools that she has utilized in assisting him. So we appreciate her coming and presenting for us today. Nancy also has presented extensively at a national level. She's presented at Charge Syndrome Foundation conferences, and then also has done Perkins School for the Blind workshop, I believe. So we're very fortunate to have her with us today. And so without further ado, if you would join me in welcoming Nancy Hartshorn.
Thank you. You keep that. Yeah. Hi. I'd like to start with finding out who everybody is. I know most people, but I just want to know your name and your role, just so we can all know who everybody is in here. So we want to start over here, Ben?
Sure. I'm Ben.
I'm glad we got to do that, because now I know who the audience is. I tried to put this together with an eye to thinking about what parents need to know and what professionals need to know, and how everybody can support each other and work together as a team. So it's nice to kind of see what kind of a mix we have here. I want to start with just, what does transition mean? And this is just the federal definition of transition. I think we all have an idea what it means in the IDEA, but I highlighted some of these words to kind of begin the talk with the kinds of things that I'm going to try to focus on. So coordinated set of activities is a big word, and we don't see that happening very well, very often, between the school and the outside agencies. It's very difficult. Movement from school to post-school activities, including education, employment, living, and community participation. So how many of you who have had IEPs with the transition page, for how many of you are they really addressing these kinds of ideas for you? They are for you? Awesome. That's awesome. The second part of it is that it's based on the child's needs, strengths, and preferences and interests. And this is another tall order, because this is really a difficult thing for a lot of teachers and school people to be able to pull together. For instance, when you put an IEP together as the teacher and the school team, you feel a sense of responsibility to make sure these things happen. But as a school team person, it's really hard to be able to say, I will make sure this child gets transitioned into this work in this home, because most of that happens after they've left school. So it's a hard place for the team members to be. So this is why I said this is a tall order for a teacher. Should be a very collaborative process. The students should definitely be involved in the choice making, the family, the ancillary service providers. And in order to do it correctly, what really should happen is you should have all the agencies involved in those IEPs as well. Bureau for Blind Persons, Deaf Blind Unit, Social Security, Voc Rehab, Community Mental Health is the big agency, right, that funds most of this stuff. But how often are these people all invited to our IEPs? I mean, this has never happened, and my son's going to have his exit IEP in May. I mean, this is last year. We've had Cindy Caldwell come once, I think. So systematic and sustained from age 14 interagency collaboration just is really, really hard to do. Okay, these agencies don't work well together, typically. So one way to simplify it is to fit students into an existing mold, right? I don't know how it works in other counties, but in Mount Pleasant, there's lots of group homes. We have a place called MMI, Mid-Michigan Industries. A lot of people with disabilities, not children, I'm sorry, adults with disabilities work there in a sheltered workshop or are sent out on crews to sweep up, pick up trash, things like that, clean hotel rooms, clean the police and fire stations, things like that. And these people aren't really given a choice, they're just assigned. It's not really based on what they might choose to do. And I have a friend named Susie who has tried to get a different job for probably the last 10 years I've known her. She has Down syndrome and she still does not have a job she likes. She's still working on the crews in the sheltered workshop in MMI, which she hates because of all the noise. They're just not focusing in on her needs and wants. It's very frustrating, but it's easy, right? The guardian signs off, fiscal intermediary signs off. That's what we do. She also, my friend, lives in her own home, which is a community mental health home, with her partner, which is a gentleman that she lives with. They both have significant disabilities, but they can live alone without a lot of support. And he considers her his wife. She's gay. She doesn't want to be married to him. But the only way they can live in that house independently alone together is if they share their resources. So it's a quote unquote marriage of convenience. They don't have enough money to each have their own place. So they have to put it together. So these are the easy ways to do it. Frequent group social activities. We get a postcard once a month from Listening Ear MMI here in town saying, we're doing this activity. We're going to all ride motorcycles, or we're going to do arts and crafts, or we're going to do this or that, or the other thing. Jacob should come, right? So social activities are all with people with disabilities. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but maybe they'd like to be part of the larger world as well, right? So funding often follows the molds. As you all know, if you've been through the school system, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? If you want what you need for your kid or for your student, sometimes you have to think out of the box and find new ways to do things. So trying to achieve a life that matches the needs, dreams, skills, and hopes for the individual in creative ways is discouraged. People don't want to do the extra work. People in special education and community mental health, they have huge caseloads, right? They're focusing on everybody. They're trying to do their best to do what they can for every person in their care, that they have on their caseload. And parents are trying to get the best they can for that one child. So there's kind of a different viewpoint, and we often clash. Services vary from community to community. What I can get for Jacob here in Mount Pleasant may be different from what somebody can get in Flint, near the School for the Deaf, and often within communities. Like I said, my friend Susie is kind of stuck in this institutional life, but Jacob has a much better life. Best thing to do is find a champion. If you can find one person who will advocate really strongly for this individual or for you as an individual, it will really help. And champions most often turn out to be parents, not always. There are service providers who really go that extra mile and do what needs to be done. But for the most part, we found out when Jacob was little, it's the parents. I remember Jacob had so many medical and educational problems. It was just coming at us from all sides. Those of you with kids with CHARGE syndrome or who have CHARGE syndrome know that there's, you're seeing 30 doctors every week for a while and stuff like that. And we used to look around and say, we need a case manager. We need somebody to help us navigate through the educational and medical system. Somebody to keep all the files, somebody to get all the doctors to talk to each other, and all of this stuff. And then we realized one day that person's not showing up. It's us. We have to be that person. Have you had that experience? Yeah. So most often the parents, of course, they have their kids' best interest at heart. They're going to be the most devoted. And so they're the people who are going to be the champions. Without a champion, the chances for achieving successful transition are enormously reduced because the state agencies charged with transition are complicated, not coordinated with each other, and often work at cross purposes. Big example. Jacob's in his own home. He's got everything he needs, got all funding he needs. Food stamps just got cut. I think he gets $92 a month to buy all his food. yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, that goes against getting him into an individual life, so. Okay, so just, I want you to think about what a supported adult life looks like. And I'm gearing this toward people who need support. Obviously, there are a lot of people with deafblindness who don't need so much support. But supported employment in the community, not in a sheltered workshop. Supported living in the community, living in a neighborhood with other people of your community, which leads you to being a full member of community, and being supported in your self-determination in making the choices that you want to make for your own life. Takes a village. Here's some parents that said, the more hands there to catch him when he falls, the better. We firmly believe that the more deeply embedded Ian is in the life of his neighborhood, workplace, and the city in general, the more people there who will be there, who will notice he's not there, and who will work to keep him there as a member of the community. We're all connected to our communities. We all have large systems of social support. Sometimes individuals with severe disabilities don't have that, and we need to help them build that. So we start with this idea of self-determination. Let me give you a definition of self-determination. Very simple. The freedom to make your own choices. Okay? So in the interest of giving you a little bit of paradigm shift here, I'd like you to look at these worksheets and answer these questions about yourself. So I think most of you get the gist of what I'm getting at here. We get to make a lot of these choices, and sometimes individuals with disabilities don't get to make a lot of these choices. These are basically what makes up self-determination. I mean, I just came up with these off the top of my head, thought of as many things I could do, but you know, how did you choose your home? Did somebody say, here's the home you have to live in? You have to live in this group home and you will have this roommate, right? What if it's somebody you can't stand and you have to share a room with them? You have to eat what we put on the table every day at 6 o'clock sharp. You can't eat after 6 o'clock, before 6 o'clock, and you have to eat what everybody else is eating. You don't have any choice in that, right? When we go out in activities in our group home, we're all going to get in the van and go to the same thing at the same time. Do you see what I'm getting at? So people with disabilities who are in institutionalized living situations don't necessarily get to make the choices the rest of us get to make. And at least one person said she went through it, Kathy, if you don't mind me saying, went through it thinking about what her son James doesn't get to make choices about, and actually found things that she'd like to help him make more choices about. So, and this is just the living. This doesn't include the vocational stuff, okay? Or the freedom to be able to make your choices about whether you want to keep going to school and things like that. So this is the Center for Self-Determination's definition of self-determination. Have the freedom to decide how you want to live your life. Have some kind of authority and choice over how you spend a budget of dollars. The support you need to be able to organize your resources in a way that is meaningful to you. I mean, don't we all budget our money in the way, I mean, we often argue about, well, I want to eat out more and he wants to put more in savings. You know, how do we negotiate those choices?
Yes, dear.
But also the responsibility to use public dollars wisely. Okay, so if Social Security and CMH and you've got a habilitation waiver and you've got all this funding, you must use it wisely. That's the responsible thing to do if you're self-determined. Example, I know a family who's hiring people to take care of their son in their home through a habilitation supports waiver, but they're having the people who come in put their son in front of the TV and clean the rest of their house, which isn't even the part where he lives in. Okay, that's not a responsible use of the dollars, right? And then just confirmation that the individual has to play an important role in the design of the system. I mean, yes, we had to design it around Jacob because Jacob doesn't have a lot of formal communication, but we get a group of people together who know him well enough to know what he would like. So, best way to do this for people who are deafblind is person-centered planning. Okay? You've all heard of person-centered plans if you're dealing with community mental health, right? You get the annual plan, and this isn't being done the right way. It's become institutionalized. Person-centered planning came out of a really innovative think tank in Canada, and it's this long process that's supposed to be fun and wild and big brainstorming brought down to making specific plans, and it has become just another piece of paper for CMH to fill out. So I want to talk about person-centered planning the right way. I was going to take a break now, but I think since we just got started, we'll keep going. Traditional planning, those of you who are school psych students will know about this, and anybody who's ever been through an IEP, 3-year reevaluation, initial testing for their kid, and teachers obviously will know what this is. Traditional planning, you do a formal assessment. Let's give the kid an IQ test. We'll have the speech and language pathologist, the vision teacher, the hearing TCVI, and all these people do an evaluation. Professional teams get together. Everybody gives their report. It goes into the IEP. We have goals and objectives. Family is there, a part of the whole thing. But it's pretty much done in a very business-like manner, right? Person-centered planning doesn't look at scores and goals and objectives. It looks at who is this person on a more global level? Who is this person really? What are their gifts? What are the things they like? How can we make their life based on these things instead of based on scores? Okay. It also uses all the people that care about the child or the individual. So instead of an IEP where just the parents and the parent advocate come in, the person, the individual decides who's going to be part of their person-centered plan. Our person-centered plan with CMH, I got a person-centered plan addendum in the mail and that asked me to sign. I mean, somebody else filled it out, mailed it to me, and asked me to sign it. It's like this. I had to call and say, what is this? Well, we just didn't get the right signatures last time, so we have to do another signature page. But that is not person-centered planning. In a person-centered plan, you would have the individual say who they wanted at their meeting. They might not want the teacher, you know, or they might just not be able to stand that one person they might not like their intervener, you know, you never know. That person may not want certain people there that they don't feel supported by. And I'm not saying anything against teachers. I'm just saying they might not want their Aunt Kathy there either, you know. They might not want the person there who's their fiscal intermediary and who decides all their budgeting because they might feel like that person is too controlling. They decide who they want to be there. If it was you and you were getting ready to plan the rest of your life and make all the decisions about what your life was going to look like, wouldn't you want to just have the people that love and support you there to help you do it? Okay, so this is what real person-centered planning is like. The goals of the person-centered plan, at the end, we want people to be present and participate in their community, gain and maintain satisfying relationships. There we go at finding friends again. Being able to make choices and express their preferences. Continue to develop, not stagnate, but we're going to keep working on, just like we all do, getting better at these things, learning new things, finding out new resources, and fulfilling respected roles and living with dignity. So just like you and me, individuals who are deafblind are not just going to stop learning when they're 26, right? I mean, I learn new stuff all the time. I read, I go to conferences, I just learn new things about myself, I get new skills, I start new hobbies. Why can't everyone do that? This is the one, fulfilling respected roles and living with dignity, means something different for every person. But being assigned to a role of picking up trash all the time without getting to choose that is not living with dignity and being in a respected role. I mean, often people with disabilities get those kinds of things, those kinds of jobs that nobody else wants, right? So what if they want something else? So I'm going to give you, as I go through what a person-centered plan is, an example of one we did for Jacob in, I think, 7th grade. We sent an invitation to people that we thought Jacob would want to be there. You're invited to Jacob's Hartshorn's future. You've been chosen because you're important to Jacob and his family. Your knowledge of, interest, and involvement with Jacob gives you the unique insight needed to build a picture of Jacob's future, especially as it involves his transition to the middle school. Okay. We wanted to talk about what his middle school program would look like because he had been fully included through 6th grade. Middle school didn't work out too great, but you know, middle school isn't always the greatest place for anybody, right? It's kind of a place where you sit until high school starts. Okay, so there are several types of person-centered planning. Making action plans is the one I'm going to talk about today, but there's also planning alternative tomorrows with hope, PATH. There's one called personal futures planning. And a lot of people combine them. The one I'm going to show you combines all of these. So you need to find a really good experienced facilitator to do this. Okay, CMH is supposed to have facilitators, but they really, again, they do it in a really bureaucratic way. Our local ARC, do you guys have an ARC where you live? Used to be, it was originally the Association for Retarded Children and then Retarded Citizens, and now it's just ARC. But it's an advocacy group for people, especially with children with disabilities and for adults themselves with disabilities. And our local ARC has experienced facilitators that if you ask for an alternate facilitator for your person-centered plan with CMH, they'll hire them to come in and do it, and they'll do it the right way, usually. Okay. So a good experienced facilitator will come to you, the individual, and the support people around the individual and say, what are our goals here? What do we want to get at? What are we going to work on? What kinds of questions do we want answered? Just like a good assessment, right? What questions do you want answered? And we'll come into the person-centered plan in a way that facilitates all of that. Okay. This is done in kind of a party atmosphere. Usually there's a lot of food, people get up and walk out and in as they need to. There's a lot of laughing and joking. It's very unprofessional IEP meeting like, okay? It's a lot of fun. These are the questions we go through for the MAPS process, and I'm going to take you through each of these one by one. History. What is this person's history? This is important because, for instance, a teacher who has a student for 1 or 2 or 3 years doesn't know the history of that child's life, right? We need to give everybody in the room a context for the past all the way into the future, not just this little slice of life that you're seeing in the classroom right now. Okay, what have been the highlights of the history? How have all these people in this room contributed to the history? Okay, what have been the relationships? So this is what we came up for Jacob's history. Again, just the highlights. You could add tons of things to these things if you talked about your own life, right? It's done on large paper, big butcher paper. Typically you have someone facilitating, and then you have a graphic facilitator who's writing things down in bright colors, maybe using pictures so the person with disabilities can see what you're talking about if they're not particularly literate, right? At some point in this person-centered plan, my son Aaron started getting up and drawing things on it. I'll point those out because he was little. Okay, so Jacob was born in 1989, 8 weeks premature. Well, the teacher never knew that, you know, or neither did this caregiver over here. He has CHARGE syndrome. He moved to Michigan when he was 3 months old, started early intervention. Did you know he had a G-tube? Yeah, that's what that scar is on his belly that he doesn't have anymore. So there's this long history. He spent 2.5 years, he went to the severe multiply impaired classroom. 1992, we had a car accident and 2 of his siblings died. And so that's a huge impact on his life. He had a sibling older and younger that would have been here for him that are no longer here. And then our focus became just on Jacob because we had 3 and now we had just Jacob. So mom started learning about inclusion and going to conferences. We started a big plan and Jacob started regular kindergarten at age 5 with supports. We started a circle of friends, so we had a lot of friends meet every monthly for him to talk about how school could work better for him. With a lot of 5 and 6 year olds, that's really fun. They don't get real focused, but as they got older, they really became an important part of his life. Then Seth was adopted, his brother, who's now 19. He began to walk at age 7. That's something nobody knew, right? They didn't know his balance was so bad that he didn't walk till he was 7 years old. His brother Aaron was born in 1997. The brand new Deafblind Project at Central Michigan University started at CMU, which was a big impact on him because I was involved in that. He had a cochlear implant at age 13, had his G-tube removed at 15 and started aiding. And now he's 17 years old. And, oh, actually, this is a later one. This isn't the middle school one. This is his senior year in high school. Today, he's walking in graduation with his peers, okay? So this is the history. And then we looked at the relationships and what is their history with Jacob. And each person talked about their relationship with Jacob as we went around the room. And we added them all in: family, friends, and service providers. For many people with severe disabilities, you got a lot of family, a lot of service providers, not a lot of friends usually, because they're in segregated settings, many people. So we were really proud that Jacob has a lot of friends. A lot of these are his circle of friends. My son Aaron wanted to be in family and friends. He said, I'm his friend too. He was like 7. Lots of service providers, grandmas and grandpas. We have church friends. Everybody at church talked about how they knew him. Karen and Leo were his first caregivers. So you can just see how this works. And everybody goes around and talks about their history. And the thing that's neat about that is everybody who is there, and of course a lot of the service providers weren't there, his doctors weren't going to come even though we invited them, talks about what they know about Jacob, what they think about Jacob. It makes him a real person instead of just paperwork, right? So for instance, the priest who was at one of his person-centered planning meetings, she'd only been our priest for 2 or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks maybe. And when we asked her to introduce herself and her relationship to Jacob, she said, I really enjoy Jacob. He brings new meaning to the term music in church because he makes a lot of noises. But it's a very positive spin on, we love having him at church. He's welcome in our community, kind of things like that. So, it gives everybody good feelings, warm fuzzies, good tingly stuff and so you start out the meeting just feeling really good, really sharing your love with that you have for this person, gets everybody on the same page. So now everybody has the same history, the same context, everybody understands where we're coming from. The next step in making action plans is to talk about dreams. And what we usually say are, what are your dreams for this person? Or what does this person dream? If it's a person who can speak for themselves, what are your dreams? What are the things you'd like to do? No dream is too big or too small. I have a friend who we were going through person-centered planning. She has severe cerebral palsy. And somebody said, I dream that she'd be able to skydive, right? And of course she went, I don't want to skydive. But no dream is too big or too small. You don't nix anybody's ideas. Everything is written down. There's no crosstalk. There's no, that wouldn't be a good idea. Nothing like that. You just get everything down. Dreams give you hope and a possible direction. They allow you to think bigger than you would if you were just doing things inside the agency boxes, right? So here are the dreams we had for Jacob. Home and parents' neighborhood that is cool, safe, and fun. Social life outside of family. Meaningful daily activities, so he's not just sitting at home going like this all the time like he does. Visits with his older brothers who live out of state. Be independent in the bathroom. We dream that for him because that's a safety issue. The more independent you can be in the bathroom, the less likelihood there is for abuse, right? Not be alone. My kids don't want Jacob to be alone, or isolated or lonely. Find a way to unlock his potential. Eat, chew, and enjoy food. His OT said that. Ability to communicate pain. This is a big one for Jacob. I don't know if the rest of you have this, but he can communicate, I want this, I want that. But when he's in pain, we just have to look at his behaviors, and we can't tell if it's an ear infection or gas pain, or we just kind of have to read the behaviors. Vibrating chair. He loves vibration. Live independently of parents and being comfortable. Visit a beach regularly, timeshare, and people in his life that he likes and that know about charge syndrome. Not just anybody should be working with him, right? We want people who understand him. Okay, then we move into fears or nightmares in the person-centered plan. Basically, they're the opposites of the dreams, right? And when you're facilitating a person-centered plan, which I've done many times, you don't want to spend too much time on this. It's real depressing, right? So you just spend a little time on it, and you never stop there. You move on to the next thing before you take a break or anything. So these may be uncomfortable or revealing. They may be very emotionally charged. And if you're the actual person that this is focused on, all of this can feel very overwhelming to have everybody talking about your life that way, okay? For someone like Jacob, who I don't believe is really understanding what's going on, I think all he feels is really all the love in the room for him. So let's look at the fears and nightmares for Jacob. No one to look over him when parents are gone. Parents, isn't that the biggest fear we have? We're gone, and what's going to happen to them, right? Communication misperceived as behaviors. How many of you parents are afraid of that, you know? So Jacob's communicating by digging stuff in his neck, and that really usually means he's got ear pain and an ear infection coming on, and somebody just starts telling him, no, stop it, don't do that, instead of understanding that that's a pain behavior. That's a nightmare. His message won't be understood. Living and working institutionally. Get lost, wander away. Deterioration of his health. Here's where my son started writing. A 7-year-old. Possibility of abuse. Being punished for communication through behaviors. Lack of meaningful activities. An increase in his challenging behaviors and social isolation. So yeah, these are all scary things that we want to try to avoid if at all possible, right? The next step is to talk about who is this person. And this gets really fun. Usually say, give us a 1 or 2 word phrase that describes this person, okay? What are their strengths? What are their skills? What are their likes and dislikes, personal qualities? Okay, it doesn't always have to be positive, but it needs to be respectful because the person's sitting right there. Okay, I don't want Tim coming in there and saying, Nancy has no delay of gratification or something like that. It is true, but I don't want you saying that in front of all my family and friends, right? Instead, you'd change it differently. Nancy likes to do things right away, right? Make it really positive. So who is Jacob? We have, well, he's deaf and blind. He's affectionate. He can be manipulative. He's an equestrian, right? He rides his horse once a week. He's stubborn and he's persistent, which are really good strengths to have for a person with a disability. He's not going to roll over and let you do what you want. He's a brother. He's a kid who needs help. He's quite adaptable. He loves the water, so he's a swimmer. Music lover. Sneaky. Opinionated.
Sorry, I'm not sure what you said.
Opinionated. Sense of humor. A guy who spits and likes to bite and chew things. Okay, it's true. We all know. He puts everything in his mouth. Clever, ticklish. He's our son. He's a teacher. A lot of people will say, Jacob has taught me so much. Expressive. Look at that. He's a hair puller. Isn't that nice? He's a puzzle. We say that about a lot of our kids, right? Not easily embarrassed. That's a nice way of saying that Jacob will take off his clothes anywhere in public. Right?
Nancy,
Yes.
I thought it was really fun. We did the 7th grade
Wait.
one going to 7th grade.
You need the...
Oh, need the mic? When we did the one going into 7th grade, and many of his members of his circle of friends were there, and we were doing this part of it, and they were saying, he's really smart. You know, he's really clever. Jacob learns a lot. And that was really interesting because that's not how I see him. But to see their perception of him was really important. And really, as you said, it was really fun to do.
Yeah. And if somebody was doing this for me in the middle of a group, I would feel pretty darn good about it. People like me, these people love me, they dig me, it's cool, right? And they want me to do well. I really think everyone should have this done for them. Maybe every birthday or something. Okay, so from the dreams and the who is, we move into needs. So you see this is a huge brainstorming process that we're trying to bring in and focus a little more all the time. What are our hopes, strengths, and interests for that person, or that person's hopes, strengths, and interests? What activities, opportunities, and supports do they need? What are their communication needs? The focus is always positive, and we brainstorm. So we're not getting into narrow little, he needs to be able to eat 3 bites 4 times a week by this date, right? We're not looking at goals and objectives. So this map for Jacob was called preferences, and this comes out of the PATH process, or not the PATH process, the personal futures planning process, but the facilitator brought it into our process. So what works? What works for Jacob? This is a really cool one. He likes the color yellow. He loves water, fans, tactile things, right? A lot of our kids like that. Swinging, going to band practice, taking walks, being read to, textures, likes to lick things. He likes his communication being acknowledged. That works for him, right? You want him to sit there and sign to you, help, 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 and nobody's paying attention, right? Routine, predictability, approach him calmly, familiar people. PECs seem to work for him, the picture exchange communication system. Being alone works for him. He just takes himself away from a situation if he gets overwhelmed. He's introverted like I am. When I come home from teaching class, I go in the bedroom and read. I just need quiet. Are any of you like that? Real introverted, just need to have some quiet. So he likes that too. The other kinds he likes rubbing his head, loves the hot tub and heat. He likes lying down in Aaron's room, and patience and persistence work with him.
Nancy, this is Jennifer. I just had a quick question. You've mentioned a lot about all of the important people that really know and understand Jacob being involved in contributing in that. And for some of the other plans, would for the individual that might be able to communicate using language, would they then be the first to mention what their hopes and dreams for themselves are, and then you would still include all of the others that are there and also know that person very well?
The person
Okay.
gets the first say.
Yes.
And if the person doesn't want anybody else to talk, they can say so. I mean, the facilitator will ask them that. Do you want other people here to contribute? Do you just want them here for support? Maybe you just want to do this alone, So yeah, it's definitely, because
That's
it's
great.
person-centered, it's all centered on that person. They have all the preference and what to do. When we talk about it with Jacob doesn't have the ability to communicate at this level, so we do it with him, for him. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
What doesn't work for Jacob, a lot of times it's the opposite. Crowds, not taking time to get to know him. Aggressive handling, right? We all know that if you're deafblind, you need some notice that you're going to be touched or grabbed, or somebody's going to take you somewhere, right? He doesn't like Kraft Easy Mac. He doesn't like grape juice with fiber. He doesn't like having lumps in his food. He'll spit them right out. He really doesn't like sitting for a long time or going to the movies. They go to the movies as a school field trip, and he can't hear it. He doesn't see it well. He doesn't understand it. He's just sitting there. What's the point? He doesn't like wearing his glasses and his cochlear. Ignoring him doesn't work. Not respecting his space. Okay, then we did a map called Images of the Future, which is kind of like, what does he need? What are his needs? Let's look at the needs he has and the dreams. And so at this point, we were starting the transition process. Jacob was about to graduate from high school at 18 and walk in graduation with his friends, okay? which he did. And he got the biggest applause of anybody because he had been fully included and they all knew him. It was so awesome. But then he's still in school. He went to school 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. He's still in school, but these are the things we're trying to focus on, vocational planning and stuff like that. In fact, the teacher at our meeting the other day asked me if I tried to hand me the cap and gown and stuff for Jacob. And I said, oh no, he's already done that. He's walked. We're not doing that again. So we wanted male interaction for him. Everybody that worked with him was female, right? All his babysitters, everybody at home, female. Church, if he wants to go. We all attend an Episcopal church, and my teenagers typically don't go anymore except for Christmas and Easter. Tim goes every week. I go when I have to. And I try to take Jacob every once in a while because it's important for him to have that community. And if he quits going, he'll lose that community of support. People will forget about him. Friendships, natural supports. Natural supports means having the support of someone who is not paid to be with you. I discovered that a friend of mine here in town has natural supports last night. A former student of mine came up and talked to me at an event we were at last night. And I said, oh, are you working with him now? And she said, no, I just live around the corner from him. We're friends, and I go over every day and I help him eat dinner. And I brought him to this tonight because I thought he'd enjoy it. We thought he'd enjoy it and he wanted to come. So she's a natural support. He doesn't pay her to be in his life. She's just a friend who helps him out. Quality, continued guardianship. Health and safety, quality physicians he likes. 24/7 care or monitoring. Clear understanding of dangerous situations. He still really doesn't have that. He'll walk out into the street. Home life, he needs a hot tub, a vibrating chair, lava lamps, sensory toys, a swing, and a music system. He needs to have people he likes around him, work that fits, swimming with his friends, and really clear communication. Meaningful and appropriate adult services, that's kind of a big want, right? That needs a lot of work behind it. His hearing consultant said, I hope he finds value in his cochlear implant. Have a balance between being alone and with others, because he does tend to isolate himself. That Jacob continues to educate others. And Tim and I both consider our careers in the directions where we do presentations about Jacob. That's Jacob doing that. You know, if we hadn't had him, this would not happen. Not just accept, but embrace his uniqueness. We don't want people to just say, oh yeah, he's a cool kid. Let's do this for him and do that. We want people to say, wow, Jacob is really a unique individual. We really enjoy him. He's our good friend. Continue the path he's on. A way to communicate, keep getting better, and remain safe and healthy. We all want that for all our kids, right? Safe and healthy, safe and healthy. We finally came down to, this was a written, I couldn't find the paper that showed this, so I was showing the needs in this on this written. I think maybe Jennifer did this. I can't remember. Or no, not Jennifer. Nicole did this. Yeah. Jacob, we thought, needed a possible video to train new care workers. We needed to get the guardianship process initiated. Community outings where unpaid people would take him out. Maybe a social opportunity with the diversity club in school. 24-hour-a-day care, which is what we've been shooting for. We want that for the rest of his life. We want a caseworker who gets involved in his team, comes to the school. That hasn't happened. This is Bureau for Blind Persons now. We wanted them involved. Needs to ride his horse, take care of it more frequently. And consider committees for social relationships and recreation. So we're wanting people in the group to form a committee to help plan Jacob's recreation and social relationships. And finally, the last part of the MAPS process is an action plan. An action plan is where you actually have all these pieces of paper posted all around the room, okay? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to reach the dreams and avoid the nightmares? How are we going to meet the needs and make a plan for the future, taking all of this into account? This whole process takes 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes you have to do it in 2 chunks, okay? You can say, what would a perfect day be like for this person? You can say, if you're doing this for school, what would a perfect school day be like for this person? Well, let's see, they ride the bus with their peers instead of the lift bus. They get off the bus at the same time, hang their coat up, go have breakfast with their friends. I mean, you just lay out the whole thing. What would it be like if it was perfect? And then you also talk about the supports that are available and the next steps. Perfect day for Jacob at school, we said, a portable communication device. This was several years ago, but now he has an iPad, and he uses he can get to all his pictures on the iPad. Amazing what technology has done for him. Have people consistently use that. We want people to continually work on auditory training with him. We want him to understand his name and stop or no. So if he's going out in the street, Jacob, stop, and he'll stop. It's a safety issue. High expectations, communication of pain, continued use of a calendar system. Have him respond when someone says hi. Well, basically, he high-fives everybody now. More inclusive opportunities. Go to band to play an instrument or just listen. He really enjoys going to band. Sit with his class in lunch. Give him the opportunity to choose his seat or table, because at that time they were having all the kids in the special needs classroom sit together, right? They went to lunch early, got their lunches, sat together and ate, and then everyone else came in. This was at the high school. Well, now Jacob sits with a bunch of other kids, and there's a certain number of people that know him and will sit with him. Need an aid for summer school one-on-one. It was always a problem. And a plan for transition and what it will look like. So our action plan at that time is where you actually make assignments to the people that we consider a committee that will come back together. And we talked about these are the things we can do right now in the next 2-3 weeks, okay? Mary Jane's going to give the family name of somebody who has some resources that they can share. I was going to talk to people in Department of Psychology about Jacob doing shredding here. So Jacob actually came to the Department of Psychology once a week and shredded. For several years he did that. The IEP team was going to look at Jacob going to band regularly. I found someone to walk across the stage with him at commencement. We brought a Circle of Friends video to show at his IEP. These are some church people who decided to make a frequently asked questions about Jacob flyer to give to newcomers at church. Beth McGregor was going to try to find a speech output device. That's the speech teacher. Team members are going to go over the goals and objectives for the IEP with us in advance, because our IEPs would be like 3 hours long because there are so many specialists. You know what I'm talking about, right? So if they all give them to us in advance and say, oh yes, we like these, then they don't have to go over them at the IEP. It goes a lot faster. Expand communication. Try to get to the horse once a week, which we now do. Get Community Mental Health and Bureau for Blind Persons invited to the IEP and get a report of what they'll offer to the team. Didn't really happen too well. The homecoming king at the high school wanted to work with Jacob, so we thought that might be a good idea. So you see, this doesn't take care of all the needs and dreams right now, but it takes care of immediate things that will lead us toward those. And ideally, you want to bring the committee back together in a month and say, what have you done? What do we need to do next? What are the next? Okay, so it becomes a real working committee around this person. You have to keep the process going or it will die out. Okay, if you don't decide when to meet again, decide who will do what, by when, and how. So here it becomes very bureaucratic. You take the big brainstorming, you've got all these great ideas, but if you don't do anything about it, what was the point in spending all that time except making the person feel good and loved? So you have to keep it going. This is an agency IEP. See, I got the big epic fail there. Okay, so this is just the first page, but many of you have seen these before. So here's the details. Personal family strengths. Jacob has become more independent in daily living skills. Examples are selecting and fixing food, eating and toileting. He's good at trying to communicate his needs and wants to others. Tolerant, sense of humor, good memory, good mobility, persistent, active with the Commission for the Blind, strong base of support, will continue to be supported by the services. His current inclusion in the community, goes to church with his mother, father, and 2 brothers, participates in activities in the community with his staff. Maury Courts, which is a a gym place here in Mount Pleasant. Children's Museum. He goes to the education building on campus to walk around. He's also involved in school, works a job development program. Desired outcome for the future, start a micro enterprise of his own. He's good at and enjoys recycling pop cans. He could possibly develop a route of businesses and turn in their recycling for them. So yeah, there's some good stuff in there, but it's not as rich, and it doesn't look at Jacob as a whole person the way the Real Person-Centered Plan does. We allow this to happen now because we feel like Jacob's life is in the right direction. He's got most things in place, you know, and we haven't needed to do a big transitional person-centered plan for a while because we have most things in place. But it's coming down to the point where we're probably going to have to again because funding things are changing and it's time for the big fight. You all know what I'm talking about. Okay, so here's a little activity and then we'll take, oh my gosh, what time is it? 11:30? Then we'll take a break. I want you to turn to the person next to you, okay, and ask them these questions if they're willing to share. You don't have to get too intimate, just in general. I want you to try to do this. Find out what their dreams are, what their needs are, strengths, nightmares. How would you describe yourself in brief? And then switch places. And do it the other way around, okay? Okay, let's come back to the group now. I want to know how you felt when you were the person answering the questions. How did that feel to you? Was there anything specific? Especially over here with the mother and son. I can imagine that was interesting.
I felt a little awkward talking about myself. I think as a mom of 4 children, and especially of a child who has, a lot of needs, you don't always think about yourself and your needs and your fears in that way, or are asked about them. So it was a little bit awkward to kind of have to think about that.
Yeah, we always have to take care of everybody else first, right?
Right.
I actually found it to be quite a lot of fun because I felt like Rachel was genuinely interested in kind of hearing about me. So we had a lot of fun with that. But I found it really kind of challenging to talk about my strengths, and I think that Rachel probably felt the same way. That was the tough category for us.
Really?
And it's not so much I don't think I have strengths. It's just hard to I guess inflate yourself in that way.
Oh, okay.
At least for me, that was tough. So that's
Okay.
my comment.
Anybody else want to share that? Okay, well let's switch gears and talk about if you were the person asking. Did you get any insights from that? What was that like?
I thought that was much easier, and I wanted to know more. I thought it was a great way to get to know someone that I didn't know before. So I was interested in that part a little bit more.
Yeah.
Or easier to do, to ask someone else.
Yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is if you're the individual in a person-centered plan, you're on display. It's difficult. And so it's very, very important that this be a safe environment with people who really care about you. You don't want to have somebody coming in and saying, you're fat and ugly and you never do anything right? That would just be horrible in front of all your friends, right? You just want people to talk about you in a very positive, I'm trying to get at the fact that the person-centered planning process is a very positive process. I've been in IEPs as a school psychologist with high schoolers where the teachers are saying, well, you don't turn in your homework in front of, their family and all the rest of it. And why don't you never do what I tell you to do? And I think, how humiliating is that when you're trying to help somebody? That teacher needs to calm down or not be a teacher or get a different kind of education or something. So, just the fact that this person's the center of attention and everybody's talking about them, it can be very overwhelming. It can be enjoyable at the same time, but it could be overwhelming. So if you had to answer all those questions in front of everybody you love and care about and want support from, how difficult might that be? Okay. So I guess I just want to know if you guys have any questions so far, because it's about time to break for lunch and the lunch is here. So if anyone has questions, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I just had one question as far as using Jacob's Person Center plan. Will community mental health, will they accept that one as well?
yes.
Will they put that in with his file?
They have to, if you ask for an alternative facilitator, like from the ARC or something, that will drive his PCP. Yeah, that will drive, it has to be somehow attached to or to the agency paperwork. It has to be attached to it. But yeah, we had it all those printed out papers with the colorful stuff and everything. I had them attach it right to his file. So, that doesn't guarantee that CMH is going to make sure all that happens. Like I said, it's a process of a lot of people getting together over and over again. And no one agency is going to make sure everything happens well, because agencies they just don't work that way. They're bureaucratic, and, you kind of have to you have to be the champion, make things happen for yourselves.
So am I to understand that CMH is already involved with Jacob now?
Yes.
They are.
Yes. Jacob's in his own home, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Oh,
and how,
okay, because
how
he's
they're
still in
involved.
school, right?
Yes. This
Because
year.
I was always under the impression that, well, for us, we couldn't have both organizations working. One kind of had to take the lead.
Right.
And really, because of the vision issue for Julian, that it was community for the blind, whatever.
Right.
But they are the ones that would maybe be the lead organization or agency to work with Julian after school. But like Cindy is the one that comes, to our IEPs, but there's very, very little involvement. And I did pose the question some time ago, why do I have to choose between the organization or the agencies in order to see which one would maybe benefit Julian the best? I always thought that, if you work together, we can,
Right.
make it happen. But just it hasn't turned out that way. And so community mental health, I had a meeting with them once, and they clearly said, well, he's still in school, and it's hard for us to try to integrate things that we would maybe be helpful with, because
Sure.
he's still a student. So I
Right.
didn't know
The
how
re-
soon we could get them
well,
in.
the
or
reason they're involved with Jacob is because we moved Jacob into his own home.
So he's considered an independent? Or
It just has to do with their supported living arrangement. They're not doing anything in terms right now of rehab, voc rehab. We don't really have Bureau for Blind Persons involved yet. And they won't be until next year when he's out of school. Yeah. And then they'll help us with intervener services for, I think they can provide an intervener for 18 months while he's working, or I haven't really got my head wrapped around that. That'll be next year's presentation. But yeah, the only reason they're involved is because we wanted to apply for what's called a habilitation supports waiver to help him get into his own home.
Okay.
Yeah. But I agree, we had nothing from them before that except respite. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yep, Julian.
I have some supports in my home with work and everything, so, I want to work hard, and I have dreams, and I don't really worry about my fears, but I have a lot of support.
That's wonderful. Really good to hear. So it sounds like you're not struggling the way I've had to struggle with Jacob. You're finding the things you need for yourself.
I hope to get a job in the future, and live near home. I'm really motivated. Yeah, I'm really looking forward, and I'm excited about the prospect of getting a job and saving money. Just, so I'll have some money of my own. That's really important to me. So that's one of my goals and dreams, is to get a job. I really need that.
You really
Something
want to be
good.
You want to be as independent as possible.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great.
Any other questions, comments, bellyaches? Okay, let's break for lunch. Come back, we'll start it again in about an hour. Okay? The restrooms are on either side of the elevators if you need to use them. And I believe all the food's back there.